Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimates Shredder from Super7. I am continuing on with my look at wave number 2 with the leader of the Foot Clan, Old Shredhead himself. So as you can see, the packaging for Shredder is a little different in that the slipcover this time around is a nice deep purple color, representative of the Foot Clan. Very, very nice. We got that bright Ninja Turtles logo on the backside. Got that same kind of manhole cover design on the front with an image of Shredder's helmet. Very, very cool looking. And when we remove that purple slipcover, we have a nice window box underneath that. Even the color of this box is different, whereas the Turtles have like that green sewer brick motif. This has more of like a bluish sewer brick color there. Still has a lot of the same graffiti type stuff going on there, but it looks very, very nice. Really cool packaging. We got a red background behind the figure, which really makes it pop, and you can just see all of the accessories in there. We got weapons, interchangeable hands, we got a swappable head, and then the back of that box even has a bio for the Shredder. So really, really nice packaging. Love the packaging on this line overall, but we're going to go ahead and get this guy pulled out of the box so we can get a closer look at him. All right, so we've got our Shredder outside of the packaging. If I bring in the tape measure here, you can see that he stands pretty much perfectly at 7 inches tall. So he is right there in scale with what we would expect from the humans, but it's pretty cool with this line because all of these characters are in scale with each other. So, if I line them up with some of the other figures from the wave, you can see that the Turtles are about an inch shorter, but then you got guys like Bebop who are even bigger. So it's really cool seeing them all standing side by side there. So this is a version of Shredder that I have always had a soft spot for, and that's just because, well, it's the Shredder toy that we had as kids, that we played with. He didn't look like this at all in the animated series. I mean, this is the shirtless, buffed out version of Shredder, wearing a blue helmet and blue armor. He looked very different in the cartoon series. So it's really cool getting kind of an updated version of that classic toy look, even if it is a bit goofy. And one of the things that Super7 did on this design that I really like is they added some metallic blue paint to the armor. You can see this going around the ridge of the helmet, as well as around the edging of all of the armor bits on the shoulder pads and on the wrists and on the shins. You got this nice metallic blue shine. The same on the spikes up there, so that's got that nice metallic blue as well. So it's a cool like two-tone look where you've got the metallic blue and the flat blue that's very similar to the vintage toy. That really makes it stand out and gives it more of that metallic look, so it doesn't just look like he's wearing a plastic toy helmet and spikes. I like that quite a bit. One of the other things I thought was pretty neat on this is that he does include a cloth cape. Now, we also have this plastic cape that we can interchange, which is going to be really great if you don't like this cloth one. But I want to talk about this first for just a minute, because the cloth one is actually positioned on him the same way it was on the vintage toy, where he's got this elastic belt that goes over the cape around the waist there. And I wasn't expecting this, but we do actually have a bendy wire inside the cape down here. So look at this. You can actually bend and pose the cape around a little bit. So if you want to kind of drape it in front of the figure, that's pretty cool. I will say that the cloth is very thick cloth, so it's not that easy to kind of pose it around and get it flowing. You do have to work with it a little bit, but that wire is running all the way down and around the cape there, and that's pretty nice. I thought that was really, really cool. Now you'll notice just by messing with it, I just undid the elastic belt, but that's because it's just a Velcro elastic belt, so that wraps around his waist. And one of the things that's really weird is that it does go over the standard belt. So when you've got it on him, it's like a double belt look. Now, it does a decent job of hiding it. Unless you're really looking for it, you may not even notice it. But it is a bit funny because he does give him a double belt look. So you can take off the elastic belt if you want, and if you just want to have that cape free flowing without it kind of wrapped around his waist, that's an option for display as well. And honestly is a bit more accurate to the way it was in the animated series. So you've got that for an option as well. That underbelt there is not removable, in case you're wondering. That is actually on the figure permanently, so it's not like I could take this off and only use the elastic belt. If you're going to use the elastic belt to hold that cloth cape around his waist, you're going to have that double belt look. So that plastic cape is the other option. So we can easily just pop the head off the ball joint, just like with all the figures. You can see the cape then just comes off the neck, and then we can bring this plastic cape in instead, and we can pop that head on there, and now we can get that same look that we just had with the kind of free hanging cape down the back, but now it's plastic if you prefer this instead of cloth. And it does look really nice. It's a bit rigid. You can see it's got some flexibility to it, but it just points straight down. But I do really like the paint deco on there. It's got a good black wash, so it really makes the folds look like they got some good shading and everything there. So it's pretty cool seeing that we've got a couple different options for display. And I actually like both of these quite a bit. I think I prefer it with that extra belt on there with the cloth cape, just because it feels more like the vintage figure. But I don't know. I might even change up my display on this guy. We'll see how it goes. Otherwise, I do think that the paint deco looks great on this guy. It's clean all the way across. Like I said, I really like the extra bits, like the metallics and everything there. It does have a bit of that shiny plastic going on, which we see a lot, especially on like a lot of the shirtless figures and stuff from Super 7 for some reason. It's a bit shiny. It's shinier in the part of his face that's exposed than it is his torso. So it's really not all that bad. So all in all, I like the look of this guy. So let's go ahead and talk about the articulation here. So that head's on that ball joint like I showed you. Though the helmet does hinder that movement just a bit, you can see it doesn't really roll around all too much, but we get a good side-to-side view there. Same thing kind of happens because of the shoulder spikes. You can see the arms can go upwards only about that far, but they do move forwards and backwards. We got a swivel at the elbow. We've got a standard joint at the elbow, single joint, which is very tight there. And then the wrists can swivel, as well as we got the hinge joints on the wrists. Now, we don't have any articulation at where the wraps are, like the gauntlet, and I want to say that I kind of wish we were able to swivel the whole forearm, because with this figure having the spikes right there, we run into some issues where sometimes when we try to pose him, the spikes end up on the side of his wrists instead of above his hands like they should be. And that's just because we don't have the ability to swivel the spikes along with the hand. So that definitely ruins some of your posing options there. So that's one little bit that I wish they would have added in on there. Now, you'll notice that there is nothing in the torso there. I assume that was done maybe because he's got a skinnier torso. Maybe they didn't want to break up the sculpt. I don't know. So there's no ab crunch there. But we can swivel the waist left and right. It also looks like it slightly rolls. So it might be on a ball joint in there, but it's not a lot of movement. Mostly, we're just going side to side there. We've got those hinge joints at the thighs, like we've seen on all the other figures in this lineup. So legs can go outwards, forwards, and backwards. They are a little loose, but not near as bad as what I saw with, like, Leonardo. So I haven't had any problems keeping this guy standing or anything like that, which is good. Probably still could be a little bit tighter. Then we have a single joint at the knees, which is actually very tight on this figure, which is nice. You can see we got a swivel at the boot cut. The spikes there are attached to the boot, so they actually swivel with the boot there. And then the ankles can rock side to side, as well as move up and down, and they're nice and tight on this figure as well. So all in all, I think the articulation's pretty good on this figure. I would have liked to see that extra little swivel there at the wrist, higher up on the forearm, just so we could get the claws to swivel with the hands. But otherwise, I think this guy's pretty good, and he stands well. I haven't had too much of an issue. Like I said, a little loose at the hips, but not near as bad as what I've experienced with figures like Leonardo. Alright, so Shredder does come with some interchangeable pieces. You can see right now his hands are the gripping hands for the weapons, but in case you want to swap those out, we also get a pair of closed fists, and we get a pair of open hands. The open hand, of course, is nice if you want to recreate that wacky pose from the vintage action figure. But you could easily pop the hands right out. They're just pegged there at the wrist, so we can pop the new one in its place. Works out really, really well. And then the other thing we've got with this figure is an interchangeable head. But I gotta be honest, it's a weird one, and maybe this needs some explaining. So real quick, I showed you guys earlier how you could pop the head off of the ball joint. You can easily take the new one. You could pop it on the joint in its place. Might be a little hard the first time, but it does snap right on the ball joint. And now we've got this really wacky looking Shredder figure where, you know, his skin and his eyebrows are coming up over the ridge of the helmet. And it looks dumb. It looks so dumb. But do you know why that's there? It's actually an homage to the vintage Shredder action figure. And I'll just go and bring him in real quick just to show you guys. I don't know if you guys ever noticed on your vintage figure, but it is the way he was painted. It's definitely like probably a mistake or a limitation maybe of the vintage figures there, but you can see his eyebrows come up over the ridge of his helmet. That's my soft head Shredder. The paint deco is a little bit more prominent on my hard head Shredder, so you can see how the eyebrows and everything come up over the ridge of the helmet. Maybe you didn't ever even realize that before, but go back and look at your Shredder figure. So that's what Super 7's doing here. It's kind of a joke. They did it to be funny. And I get it. You know, like, it's not lost on me. I think that stuff like that is really funny and it's humorous. But here's the thing. I'm never going to display him with that head. I don't know if anybody's going to. So I'm going to get a little nitpicky right now and say the joke is great. I get the joke, but it might have been cool to get an alternate head with an Orokosaki head or something like that instead. So just throwing that out there just to be a little nitpicky. All right, so as far as his weapons go, just like we've seen with some of these other figures, he does come with the unpainted weapon still attached to the sprue, which is an homage again to the vintage action figures. But if you don't want to pop those off of there and use the unpainted ones, he also comes with all of these weapons fully painted. So he's got some of the same sparring weapons that we've seen with the Ninja Turtles, which again comes straight from the vintage toys. He can hold on to most of those except the throwing stars. None of his hands are tight enough to hold the tiny little throwing stars, but they're included. They're extra weapons. And then, of course, we've got his sword, which, again, straight out of the vintage figure. I do really love this, especially the fully painted one with the nice shiny silver blade. You got a nice paint deco on the handle and the hilt there. And he does get a really good grip on that with his gripping hand. So it's really nice to have him holding onto that sword. And I still have that really dumb head on my Shredder. I'm going to swap that off right now. There we go. All right. So we've got our better looking Shredder with his sword. Yeah, man, I really like the sword. I think that's a really nice accessory and definitely the one I will be posing with my Shredder action figure. All right, guys, it's comparison time. So I brought them in here briefly, but let's go ahead and pose them alongside that vintage Shredder action figure that he is based upon. This is where the shirtless, blue armored version of Shredder comes from. Again, I've got a soft spot for this goofy looking figure, and I really love getting this new update. And hey, we've had a lot of Shredder action figures from NECA Toys in recent years, so let me go ahead and put them in here with some of those just so you can see them all lined up side by side. There's the one that's inspired by the original cartoon series, there's the one inspired by the original films, but we've also got video game figures, we've got Super Shredder, we've got Mirage Comics. It's pretty cool seeing all these lined up. And you know what? It's so crazy, because as a Turtles fan, I look back and I realize that there have never really been any great Shredder action figures until the last couple years. And now look at how many of them we have. It's pretty awesome. So there you go, my friends. There is a look at the brand new TMNT Ultimates Shredder action figure from Super 7. All in all, I'm really happy with this guy. I don't really have any huge complaints on him. Minor nitpicks with the alternate head and maybe the swivels at the wrists. But otherwise, I think he's a great update of the vintage action figure. I love seeing that old crazy design get some love with a new super articulated action figure. Really happy to have this one to add amongst all those other great Shredder action figures that we've had come out in the last couple years. So like all of the Super 7 Ultimates figures, Wave 2 here was pre-order only, and then it was produced for however many were ordered, so they are sold out through Super 7. You'll have to track them down on the secondary market. As of the recording of this video, the full Wave 2 was sold as a set in stock at Big Bad Toy Store, so I will link that in the video description below. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and until next time.